They say Hollywood is built on dreams. But that's only half true. The rest of it, the part no one wants to talk about, is built on exhaustion, control, and the people who gave too much of themselves just to make it perfect. Behind every award, there's someone who broke. Behind every masterpiece, a fight that never made the credits. Some call them difficult. Some say ungrateful. But maybe they were just too honest in a place that rewards silence. This isn't a list about bad behavior. It's about what happens when passion eats the person alive. 15 names. 15 storms. 15 reminders that genius is never gentle. So, before we judge them, maybe we should ask, what if being difficult was just another word for hurting? 15. Bruce Willis. Bruce Willis always carried a kind of stillness, a calm that felt unshakable, almost supernatural, to the audience, that made him magnetic. To the people who worked with him, it sometimes made him impossible, because behind that quiet confidence was something else: distance. He wasn't a screamer. He didn't throw things. His power was colder than anger. If he didn't agree with a scene, if he thought a line didn't work, he'd simply stop. The room would freeze. Directors would rewrite entire pages just to fill that silence. He didn't argue, one crew member said. He just made you feel wrong. Kevin Smith once called filming with Bruce on Cop Out a soul-crushing experience. He didn't mean Bruce was cruel, he meant he couldn't reach him. There was a wall there, invisible and unbreakable, separating the star from the world around him. For years, everyone assumed that was arrogance, the classic curse of a man who'd seen too much success for too long. Then, the truth surfaced. Aphasia, a disease that steals speech, memory, connection. Suddenly, the coldness, the detachment, the silence, it all made sense. Bruce wasn't pulling away from people, the world was slipping away from him, and he was fighting to stay inside it for as long as he could. Looking back, the moments that once seemed proud now feel fragile. The man who built his fame on control was slowly losing the ability to command even his own voice. His legacy changed overnight, from the unapproachable titan to a man quietly at war with his own mind. Hollywood called him difficult, but maybe he was just tired of pretending to be invincible while everything inside him was breaking. Because sometimes, strength doesn't look like power. Sometimes, it looks like a man refusing to fall apart in front of the cameras. 14. Edward Norton. Edward Norton doesn't yell, doesn't threaten, doesn't throw tantrums. His rebellion is quieter, but it cuts deeper. He questions, he rewrites, he dissects everything until no illusion is left standing. And for a business built on pretending, that kind of truth is unbearable. From Primal Fear to Fight Club, Norton seemed unstoppable, a man too intelligent for stardom, too precise for chaos. He didn't just play conflicted characters, he mirrored them. Every project became an autopsy of meaning, every line a negotiation. He wasn't chasing fame, he was chasing clarity, and clarity is expensive in Hollywood. On American History X, that obsession tore the set apart. Norton clashed with director Tony Kaye so violently that he ended up in the editing room himself, reshaping the film. The studio sided with him. The movie became iconic, and the industry quietly branded him dangerous. Because the moment an actor wins a war with a director, every producer starts sleeping with one eye open. Later, on The Incredible Hulk, history repeated itself. Norton wanted tragedy, psychology, human weight. Marvel wanted explosions. They fired him before the sequel. The statement read, "Creative differences." Everyone in the business knew what that really meant. Too much mind for the machine. People who've worked with him describe a paradox. He's soft-spoken, brilliant, articulate but exhausting. He'll ask 100 questions that no one has the time or courage to answer. He doesn't sabotage, he just refuses to settle. And that's what makes him impossible. You can almost feel sympathy for him, a man cursed with the need to understand everything in a world that rewards obedience. In another industry, he might have been a philosopher. In Hollywood, he's a warning. Edward Norton doesn't destroy sets or scream at crew members. He does something more dangerous. He reminds everyone that this is supposed to mean something. And in a town where meaning slows down money, that's the hardest crime to forgive. 13. Katherine Heigl. Katherine Heigl was never meant to be a villain. For a moment, she was Hollywood's perfect dream, the blonde next door who could make you laugh, cry, and believe in happy endings. She was luminous, sharp, and confident. Maybe too confident for the industry that built her. At the height of her fame, she had everything: an Emmy for Grey's Anatomy, a breakout role in Knocked Up, and a reputation as the woman who could revive the dying romantic comedy. But then she spoke honestly, publicly, and without the filters that keep most stars alive. She said Knocked Up felt a little sexist. She withdrew her name from Emmy consideration, claiming the scripts didn't deserve it. In a town addicted to flattery, honesty is the quickest way to die. Within months, the narrative shifted. The headlines called her ungrateful. Directors whispered she was difficult. The press turned her confidence into ego, her self-respect into arrogance. She became a symbol not of power, but of warning. Don't pull a Heigl. On set, stories started spreading, that she challenged scripts, that she brought her mother to meetings, that she wanted rewrites and didn't always hide her frustration. Maybe some of it was true. Maybe she was just tired of pretending to be grateful for roles that reduced her. Either way, Hollywood doesn't forgive women who stop playing nice. By the time she realized what was happening, the damage was done. Her name, once in lights, now floated through late-night jokes. Her career slowed to a crawl. Interviews became apologies wrapped in grace. "I wasn't difficult," she said softly. "I was just misunderstood." And maybe she was, because all Katherine Heigl ever did was speak with the kind of honesty that the industry demands in scripts but punishes in real life. Her story isn't about arrogance, it's about survival, about what happens when a woman refuses to smile while she's being erased. Hollywood didn't destroy Katherine Heigl for being wrong. It destroyed her for being right too soon. 12. Christian Bale. Christian Bale doesn't just act, he inhabits. Every role becomes a cage he willingly locks himself inside, starving, breaking, rebuilding, until there's nothing left but truth. To the audience, that looks like brilliance. To the people who work with him, it sometimes looks like destruction. He's not loud for the sake of it. When he loses control, it's never random. It's the sound of a man trying to keep the illusion alive. During Terminator Salvation, the world heard that sound. A crew member crossed into his sightline mid-scene, and Bale exploded. The recording leaked. 4 minutes of fury, rhythm, and precision like an orchestra of anger conducted by obsession. People laughed. People condemned him. Few understood that in his mind, the break in focus wasn't minor, it was blasphemy. That's how Bale works. When he's in, he's all in. For The Machinist, he starved himself to skin and bone. For Vice, he transformed his body again heavier, slower, nearly unrecognizable. Each performance feels like a penance he willingly pays, as if guilt is the price of greatness. Crew members say he's polite, even kind until something disrupts the world he's building. Then he turns into the character, merciless and unreachable. "He doesn't snap," one director said. "E detonates quietly." His energy consumes everything near it, not because he wants control, but because he can't stop himself from caring too much. Bale once admitted he's ashamed of his outbursts. You can hear it in his voice, the regret of a man who's seen what obsession costs. Yet he keeps diving back in, again and again, chasing the high that only total transformation can give. He's chasing truth, and truth, in his world, demands blood. Christian Bale doesn't need to be forgiven. He needs to be understood. Because for him, acting isn't pretending, it's survival through obsession. And that's the tragedy of it all. In a world full of fakes, he cared too deeply, and Hollywood punished him for meaning it. 11. Val Kilmer. Val Kilmer had the kind of beauty that makes people stare, and the kind of mind that makes them stay uncomfortable. He wasn't built for obedience. Every frame of his career is marked by a war between what Hollywood wanted him to be and who he insisted on becoming. He could have coasted on charm. Top Gun made him a star, Tombstone made him a legend, and The Doors proved he was an artist. But Kilmer never coasted. He questioned. He argued. He believed every word, every gesture, every breath had to mean something, and that belief devoured him and everyone around him. On the island of Dr. Moreau, his perfectionism became a storm. He clashed with director and co-star alike, challenging decisions, changing lines, walking off set mid-scene. Crew members described the atmosphere as suffocating. Marlon Brando called him psychotic. Kilmer called it truth. The film fell apart under the weight of too many egos, but his performance still shimmered with intensity, proof that chaos and genius often speak the same language. Even Batman Forever turned into another battleground. Director Joel Schumacher later said Val was childish and impossible, yet admitted he'd never seen anyone so consumed by the need to get it right. Kilmer wasn't fighting others, he was fighting compromise. And compromise is Hollywood's favorite sin to forgive itself for. Years later, cancer stole his voice, the one thing he'd never stop using to defend himself. In his documentary Val, he speaks through a device, eyes soft with the kind of clarity that comes only after losing everything. I wasn't difficult, he says. I was just trying to tell the truth. Maybe he was. Maybe Val Kilmer was a man born into an industry allergic to sincerity. He lived like fire, too bright, too demanding, too pure for the oxygen around him. And when the flames finally dimmed, what was left wasn't arrogance or regret, just the quiet glow of someone who once burned for meaning in a world that preferred mirrors. 10. Shia LaBeouf. Shia LaBeouf has always felt like a fire that burns too close to the skin, mesmerizing, dangerous, and impossible to control. He came into Hollywood with the kind of raw talent that made people stop and watch, but also with a restlessness that no amount of fame could calm. It wasn't ambition that drove him, it was survival. He grew up fast, too fast. Fame came before peace, applause before maturity. Even Stevens made him famous, Transformers made him rich, and Fury proved he could act with the kind of pain that can't be faked. But behind every great performance was a man unraveling. He didn't want to pretend. He wanted to feel everything, even if it hurt everyone around him. On Lawless, he fought Tom Hardy off-screen. During Fury, he cut his own face with a knife to stay in character, stopped showering, and pushed his co-stars past their limits. The set became a mirror of his inner world, unpredictable, volatile, raw. Some called it method acting, others called it self-destruction. Both were right. By Nymphomaniac, his obsession with authenticity turned reckless. He sent his own sex tapes to director Lars von Trier. He chased pain the way other people chase roles. When Olivia Wilde fired him from Don't Worry Darling, citing combative behavior, Shia called it passion. Maybe it was. But passion without boundaries is just another word for chaos. Over time, the chaos caught up. Arrests, scandals, lawsuits, all of it painted him as Hollywood's eternal problem child. But years later, in his own words, he admitted what fame had disguised. I was hurting. I thought pain made me real. In Honey Boy, the film he wrote about his childhood and his abusive father, Shia, finally turned the camera inward. It wasn't redemption, it was confession. A man confronting the boy he used to be, and the monster he became trying to protect him. Shia LaBeouf isn't difficult. He's haunted. He's proof that brilliance can bloom out of trauma, and that sometimes the cost of feeling everything is losing the ability to feel safe anywhere. Because some fires don't go out. They just burn quietly when no one's watching. 9. Jennifer Lopez. Jennifer Lopez has spent her entire life trying to be flawless, not out of vanity, but out of fear. In her world, perfection isn't ego, it's armor. Every movement, every frame, every breath of her career is measured, polished, and deliberate. She built herself into a machine that never breaks because Hollywood doesn't forgive women who do. When she steps onto a set, the air changes. She doesn't shout, doesn't plead. She simply expects, and the room rearranges itself around that expectation. Crew members describe her as exacting to the point of exhaustion. Assistants say she'll reject a scene because the lighting doesn't match her intuition, the energy feels wrong, or the sound of her own footsteps isn't powerful enough. She isn't cruel. She's calibrated. Her reputation followed quickly. Difficult, controlling, impossible. But behind the whispers lies a truth. Few understand Jennifer Lopez has never had the privilege of being ordinary. From the Bronx to the Oscars, she had to prove herself in every room twice over. She learned early that discipline was survival, and that emotion real. Messy emotion could cost her everything she'd built. On The Wedding Planner, on Selena, on Enough, she became her own producer, choreographer, and enforcer. She pushed, demanded, rewrote, not because she craved dominance, but because she refused to be disposable. That refusal earned her both respect and resentment. Co-stars often describe her as distant. Some call her cold. But the truth is simpler. Jennifer Lopez built walls because she had to. Every inch of power she holds was clawed from a world that told her she didn't belong. Those walls don't keep people out, they keep her from breaking down. At the end of the day, she still delivers. Always. Every take glows, every frame sells the dream, and maybe that's her quiet tragedy that no one ever sees the woman underneath the perfection. Jennifer Lopez isn't difficult. She's tired. Tired of being perfect, tired of being strong, tired of knowing that if she ever lets go, the world will call it a fall. Because in Hollywood, the only way a woman survives is to never let anyone see her bleed. 8. Russell Crowe. Russell Crowe used to walk onto a set like a man who carried lightning in his veins. He didn't need to command attention. It followed him. He was the living embodiment of strength, discipline, and danger. The kind of actor whose presence made other men stand straighter and directors hold their breath. But power like that always comes with a cost, and for Russell, it was peace. Gladiator turned him into myth. The gravel in his voice, the fire in his eyes, audiences saw honor and fury. Hollywood saw money. Behind the camera, though, the same intensity that built his empire started to break it. He argued with producers, rewrote dialogue, and once threw a phone at a hotel clerk because the world didn't move fast enough for him. He wasn't trying to be cruel, he just couldn't tolerate mediocrity. His temper was his truth. Peter Weir, who directed him in Master and Commander, once said that Crowe never stops fighting for the film. It was meant as a compliment, but also a warning. He cared too much, too loudly, too constantly. On Robin Hood, he clashed with Ridley Scott over everything from the script to his accent. Every scene was a negotiation. Every day, a war between passion and patience never won. As the years went on, the fire dimmed but never died. Interviews grew quieter, his eyes less furious, his voice heavier. He started talking about home, about solitude, about the quiet life away from the noise. You could almost feel the fatigue in him, the exhaustion of a man who had fought too many battles, both real and imagined. He was never the villain the tabloids made him out to be. He was just a man who believed too deeply in authenticity in an industry built on illusion. And when you care that much, rage becomes your only language. Russell Crowe was never hard to work with, he was hard to contain. Because when you live your life as a warrior, you don't know how to stop fighting, even when the war is over. And that's the tragedy of men like him. They win every battle and lose themselves in the victory. 7. Lindsay Lohan. Lindsay Lohan's story feels like something Hollywood has told too many times. A child born for the spotlight, adored by the world, and devoured by it just as quickly. But her version was crueler, lonelier, and far more real. When she first appeared in The Parent Trap, she wasn't acting, she was being. That natural glow, that spark in her eyes, made people fall in love with her before she even understood what fame was. By the time she was a teenager, she wasn't just famous. She was the face of early 2000s Hollywood Freaky Friday, Mean Girls, Herbie Fully Loaded. Every camera adored her. Every studio wanted her. Every headline owned her. And that's where it all started to collapse. She was a child forced to live an adult's exhaustion. Endless shoots, parties dressed up as networking, producers calling her mature for her age. She wasn't mature. She was terrified. The press turned her into a product beautiful when smiling, scandalous when falling apart. On set, her exhaustion showed. She missed call times, forgot lines, disappeared for hours. During Georgia Rule, the studio publicly scolded her for being irresponsible. The label stuck. Suddenly, she wasn't Hollywood's darling anymore. She was difficult, a liability, a warning. But what no one cared to see was the truth behind that label. Lindsay was drowning, and the industry that raised her was the water. Addiction came next, followed by mugshots and late-night jokes. But beneath the chaos was a broken rhythm, the echo of a young girl who never got to be young. Every time she tried to rebuild, the world laughed. Every step toward healing became another tabloid headline. Years later, when the noise finally faded, she spoke softly about those years. "I was a kid," she said. "I didn't know how to stop the world." And maybe she never could. Because in Hollywood, the machine doesn't stop for anyone, not even for the girls it built from scratch. Lindsay Lohan wasn't difficult. She was unprotected. She didn't fall apart because she was weak. She fell apart because nobody ever told her she was allowed to stop being perfect. 6. Chevy Chase. Chevy Chase could make anyone laugh except the people who knew him best. His comedy was razor-sharp, his timing flawless, and his face seemed built for mischief. But behind the smirk that made America fall in love was a man who couldn't stop pushing people away. In the 70s, he was a star unlike any other, tall, handsome, effortlessly funny. He was Saturday Night Live's first breakout celebrity, the kind of performer who made chaos look graceful. Audiences adored him. Castmates? Not so much. Bill Murray once called him insufferable minutes before they came to blows backstage. It wasn't a misunderstanding, it was a preview. Chevy's confidence was never quiet. On set, he'd cut people down with a single joke. He could turn charm into cruelty faster than anyone. Writers learned to hide when he entered the room. Directors braced themselves. "He's brilliant," one of them said, "but he has no brakes." And that's what made him dangerous. He didn't know when to stop. Even decades later, nothing changed. On Community, he reignited his reputation as Hollywood's favorite nightmare. He argued with the writers, hurled slurs at co-stars, and fought with showrunner Dan Harmon until the studio finally forced him out. His castmates stopped pretending. They didn't hate his talent, they hated the way he used it. But somewhere beneath the bitterness was a man terrified of fading. Chase had been on top, once the funniest man in America, and he couldn't forgive the world for moving on. His sharpness, once magnetic, hardened into spite. He kept joking long after the laughter turned to silence. There's a sadness in that, isn't there? A man who built his life on timing, losing all sense of it. The punchlines didn't land anymore, and he didn't understand why. He thought the world got soft. The truth was, he got cruel. Chevy Chase isn't difficult because he stopped being funny. He's difficult because he never learned how to be kind. And maybe that's the cruelest twist of all, that the man who made millions laugh will be remembered most for the people he made cry. 5. Megan Fox. Megan Fox never stood a chance at being ordinary. From the moment she appeared on screen, the camera didn't just look at her, it lingered. She was breathtaking, confident, magnetic. Hollywood called it luck. But for Megan, it was a trap built out of flattery. At 20, she became the face of a generation. Transformers turned her into a global fantasy, the dream girl who could fix cars in slow motion. Her fame erupted overnight, and so did the pressure. The same people who idolized her beauty were the first to punish her for it. Everyone wanted her to be grateful, silent, flawless. She tried, until she couldn't anymore. When she spoke about her experience calling director Michael Bay a nightmare to work for and comparing his on-set methods to those of a dictator, it didn't matter if she was right. Hollywood closed its ears and sharpened its knives. Within weeks, she was out of the franchise. The girl the industry had built up in lights was suddenly erased with a single headline: difficult. The truth was quieter, sadder. Megan wasn't arrogant, she was exhausted. Objectified in auditions, dismissed in meetings, and reduced to the sum of her looks, she started to fight back the only way she knew how, with words. But in a world that feeds on control, her defiance felt like betrayal. The press mocked her, the studios ghosted her. Her career flatlined while men twice as volatile were called artistic. Years later, when the noise faded, she began to speak again, this time softer, stronger, wiser. She talked about the cost of beauty, about being used and abandoned by a system that loves its women loud on screen and silent off it. "I was never broken," she said once. "I was discarded." That sentence still hangs heavy over her story. Megan Fox wasn't destroyed by fame, she was destroyed by other people's fantasies. And the saddest part is that she saw it coming, and no one believed her. Because in Hollywood, beauty is worshipped until it talks. And once it does, they call it trouble. 4. Tom Hardy. Tom Hardy doesn't just perform, he erupts. Every set he steps onto feels like it's holding its breath. He's the kind of actor who turns silence into tension and chaos into art. And that's the problem. You can't contain a man like that. You can only survive him. Hardy's intensity is legend. He doesn't enter a role, he surrenders to it. In Bronson, he became the embodiment of rage, shaving his head, building muscle, and channeling madness until the line between himself and his character blurred. On Mad Max, Fury Road, his dedication turned into friction. He clashed with Charlize Theron, disappearing into character so deeply that she once said she didn't feel safe. The set became a wasteland of its own scorching heat, exhaustion, and 2 stars locked in emotional combat. Later, Hardy apologized. He said he was overwhelmed, young, desperate to prove himself. There was sincerity in his voice, but also sadness, the sound of a man who knew he'd gone too far. On set, he can be warm one moment, unreachable the next. He'll question every frame, every word, every movement, until no one's sure whether he's chasing perfection or trying to silence the noise in his own head. Some call it genius, others call it impossible. Both are right. Hardy's ferocity comes from a darker place. Before Hollywood, he fought addiction, violence, self-destruction. Acting didn't save him, it gave his chaos a language. That's why his performances feel dangerous. They're not pretend, they're confession. He once said, "I don't act, I build people out of pieces of myself." Maybe that's why working with him feels like standing next to a live wire. You can feel the current, and you know it could kill the scene or make it immortal. He's not arrogant, just relentless, trapped between who he was and who he's pretending to be. Tom Hardy is proof that some actors don't perform for audiences. They perform to stay alive. And maybe that's why people call him difficult, because he's not chasing fame. He's trying to keep the darkness inside him from swallowing the light. 3. Marlon Brando. Marlon Brando wasn't just an actor, he was a language. Every pause, every whisper, every flicker of his eyes changed what cinema thought it could say. He didn't perform emotion, he invented it. But genius, when left unchecked, becomes its own disease, and Brando caught it early. In the 50s, he was untouchable. A Streetcar Named Desire, On the Waterfront, The Godfather. He made honesty look dangerous and masculinity look fragile. The camera didn't just love him, it surrendered to him. But somewhere between brilliance and boredom, he began to lose interest in playing the game. Hollywood wanted obedience. Brando wanted truth, even if it made everyone miserable. He stopped memorizing lines, refused rehearsals, demanded cue cards scattered across the set so he could improvise without breaking eye contact. He'd arrive late or not at all. Directors called it sabotage. He called it freedom. On Apocalypse Now, Francis Ford Coppola saw both. Brando showed up overweight, unread, unprepared. The production was chaos. But when the lights dimmed and he began to speak slow, hypnotic, terrifying. The chaos turned holy. The same man who nearly ruined the film saved it with a whisper, "The horror, the horror." He didn't care about fame anymore. He didn't believe in it. He believed in rebellion, in truth, in breaking things that felt fake. Hollywood is a place where they'll pay you $1,000 for a kiss and 50 cents for your soul, he once said. And he meant it. The more he saw of the industry, the less he wanted from it. People called him impossible, arrogant, insane. Maybe he was all three, but maybe he was also right. Maybe he saw that Hollywood doesn't want truth, it wants control. And Marlon Brando refused to be controlled by anything, not even his own legend. By the end, he had become what he feared most, a myth trapped in flesh. People no longer spoke to him, they quoted him. Marlon Brando wasn't difficult. He was done pretending. And that's what terrified them most. A man who finally realized he didn't need their approval to be immortal. 2. Jared Leto. Jared Leto doesn't play characters, he becomes them. Entirely, painfully, sometimes beautifully, sometimes horrifyingly. He's one of those rare artists who treats every role like a ritual, as if the camera were an altar and sacrifice the only way to reach God. But that kind of devotion doesn't come without casualties. For Leto, transformation is oxygen. On Requiem for a Dream, he starved himself until he could barely stand. For Dallas Buyers Club, he disappeared into rayon, delicate, broken, radiant, and walked away with an Oscar. But the same commitment that makes him extraordinary is what makes him unbearable. He doesn't know how to stop. On Suicide Squad, he tried to live as the Joker, not act, live. Co-stars received bizarre gifts, bullets, a dead rat, used condoms. He said it was method acting. They called it madness. Viola Davis confessed she nearly used pepper spray on him. Will Smith said he never actually met Jared, only the Joker. The line between performance and pathology blurred until no one could tell which one they were working with. During Morbius, he refused to break character even between takes. Limping across set on crutches, he slowed filming to a crawl. Crew members eventually wheeled him to the bathroom just to keep the day moving. To Leto, that wasn't chaos, it was integrity. If you're not uncomfortable, he once said, you're not creating anything worth feeling. It's easy to mock that level of obsession. It's harder to admit that it comes from love, a desperate need to make something real in a business built on pretending. That need consumes him, and everyone nearby. He isn't trying to be strange. He's trying to find truth in a world allergic to it. People call Jared Leto difficult, but he's really just fearless, a man so determined to feel alive that he's willing to bleed for fiction. The tragedy is that the deeper he dives into his roles, the more he disappears. And maybe that's the real story here. That some actors don't lose themselves in their characters. They lose themselves to them. 1. Kanye West. Kanye West doesn't follow rules, he builds worlds. He doesn't take direction, he is the direction. To work with him is to stand in the path of a hurricane that somehow paints cathedrals as it moves. Everyone who's ever collaborated with him tells the same story. Chaos, exhaustion, brilliance, awe. And when it's over, silence, because no one can quite explain what they just witnessed. He doesn't separate art from life. For Kanye, they're the same thing. That's why every project feels like an act of worship and every meltdown, a confession. On Runaway, he made crews rebuild sets because the colors in his dreams didn't match reality. On Donda, he turned stadiums into sanctuaries, slept in the arena, and rewrote the show night after night like a man trying to summon God. People called him unpredictable. He called it purpose. He can be impossible. He'll fire teams mid-project, scrap million-dollar ideas over a single instinct. He speaks in sermons, not sentences half genius, half gospel, all conviction. To outsiders, it's arrogance. To those who've seen him work up close, it's obsession. He's not trying to control everything. He's trying to align the universe with whatever vision only he can see. But underneath the spectacle, There's a quiet sadness, the loneliness of someone who feels things too big for the world around him. Kanye's brilliance isolates him, his perfectionism suffocates him. And yet, he keeps building, keeps burning, keeps reaching for something that can't be touched. Maybe that's the curse of visionaries. They see eternity and try to fit it into a human life. He's been called everything: egomaniac, genius, villain, prophet. Maybe he's all of them. Maybe that's the price of seeing the world in color while everyone else lives in grayscale. Kanye West isn't difficult because he wants power. He's difficult because he's terrified of being ordinary. And when you live your life chasing the divine, there's no such thing as enough. Only the silence that follows after the storm. When the music ends and the creator is left alone with his creation. Every light in Hollywood shines because someone burned for it. That's the part no one tells you. Behind every name on this list, every triumph, every tantrum, every so-called difficult soul, there's a person who cared too much, loved too hard, and couldn't make the world understand what it costs to stay extraordinary. They were never monsters, just mirrors. They showed us what art really demands: obsession, control, defiance, and sometimes the quiet madness that follows genius like a shadow. The industry called them arrogant, unstable, impossible. But what if they were just human beings, trying to survive in a machine that punishes humanity? We love to worship our icons, then crucify them when they stop pretending. We take their chaos and call it entertainment. Their pain becomes a headline, their honesty, a scandal. And still, they keep creating because for them, silence is death. Maybe that's the secret no one dares to say out loud, that the people we call difficult are often the ones who feel the most, the ones who bleed, so the rest of us can escape for 2 hours in the dark. So the next time we whisper their names with judgment, maybe we should lower our voices, not out of pity, but out of respect. Because in Hollywood, perfection is never born clean. It's carved from suffering, sharpened by loneliness, and carried by those brave enough to lose everything just to make us feel. And that's not difficulty. That's devotion.